Hello everyone, this is Trackpad Artist, and welcome back to our continued exploration of Ryng. Last week, we dove into some of the specifics of Ryng's many diverse ecosystems, looking into a few examples of the magical fauna that lives alongside humanity on Ryng's interfaces. In delving into these animals, the Skordali and the Mosker, we looked into their physiology, arcane abilities, and social habits, as well as their relationships with mankind and their progression of the arcane. This week, we'll be looking into another collection of arcane beings, crucial to the advancement of the arcane industry. Let's finally look a little closer into the Rynguard. The Rynguard are a general classification of beings used to categorize the arcane constructs that lie beneath Ryng's surface. This subterranean space in which they reside is commonly referred to as the Underyng. The Underyng, a labyrinthine collection of chambers and corridors that extend beneath the entirety of Ryng, serves as both one of Ryng's greatest mysteries, as well as its greatest blessing. It is only within these subterranean corridors that mankind can find access to glass, the arcane mineral responsible for the magical protection necessary to cast these arcane energies. The corridors of the Underyng closest to the surface, known as deposits, are composed almost entirely of unrefined glass, sporting a limestone-esque color and texture within this unrefined state. As such, the discovery of a deposit is an event of great importance to a society, as it opens up a slew of possibilities for a blossoming province, opening the doors to the arcane industry in its trade, research, and invention. Still, this unrefined glass holds none of its valued qualities, in and of itself, and thus must first be refined in order to prove of any use to a practitioner of magic. This process, however, is not one that is widely known amidst the general populace, the Brass Lotus deeming such techniques too controversial to be released publicly. As such, the Brass Lotus commissions specific licenses to particular smiths, known as refiners. This license, however, is not available to any common blacksmith, needing a recommendation from an actively practicing refiner in order to even be considered for such a position. This has led the practice of most glass refining to remain within particular family lines, giving rise to an entirely new class of noble house, being those that control the manufacturing and refinement of arcane glass. Rather surprisingly, however, these houses often have minimal formal ties to the Lotus, often developing their practice as a private entity rather than pledging any allegiance to any particular guild. Even so, there are still a great many of these noble houses that align themselves with a particular guild or province, negotiating trade contracts in order to produce exclusively for a particular group or organization. As much freedom as these refining houses have, however, the Brass Lotus still holds a great deal of sway over them, as it is only the Brass Lotus that holds any written record of the glass refining process, with any external documentation of such a process being strictly forbidden. This is in part due to the nature of the glass refining process, a grisly procedure derived from a modified order of blood magic, known only as Biomancy. Biomancy is the practice of altering and manipulating living tissue through a combination of surgical and arcane means, a process necessary in order to produce a refined arcane glass. The procedure involves the grinding and liquefaction of the unrefined mineral, before having it injected into the bloodstream of a still living organism. The specific reactions that take place within such an organism are known only to the Lotus. However, it is theorized that blood and glass's inherent connection to the arcane combine in some way, giving form to a refined product. After several hours of exposure to the unrefined product, the mineral purifies, solidifying once more in its transparent crystalline structure. It is at this point that the refined glass can then be extracted, needing to do so surgically, as the glass takes the shape of a portion of the host's circulatory system. Because of this process, organisms with a higher metabolism are preferred for refinement, allowing for the glass to spread to a greater area within the body before extraction. As one can imagine, this procedure is fatal under every circumstance, as are the near entirety of all procedures involving the use of biomancy. Because of this high mortality rate, biomancy is forbidden by law by decree of the Brass Lotus, which is what comes to give them their power over these glass refining houses, as the Lotus holds the ability to arrest any house who chooses to step a little too far out of line, under the grounds of practicing biomancy. As such, even if a house has no formal ties to the Lotus, their sway over them is undeniable, and often called into question within conspiratorial circles and discussions. This procedure, as one can infer, calls into question the very nature of glass and the Underyng, a nature that can only truly be explored through the lens of the glass Emissary. One of Ryng's many minor deities, gods created by hands other than Father's, the glass Emissary, or Dwes as is its name, is not a god of divine light, but one of glass and metal. God of constructs, artificery, and the Underyng, Dwes is depicted as a humanoid machine made of a dark metal and gold, his featureless, mannequin-esque face bearing a single socket for a golden eye. Celestial light, imbued by his divine life-givers, hovers above his head as a halo, carved into the shape of a cog. With his organic design, he is often depicted as such, draped in long, priestly robes. His symbol, as is his halo, is a golden cog. Dwes is a paradoxical being, the offspring of knowledge and life, a divine construct who walks the thin line between the organic and the inorganic. Originally, Dwes was forged from the mind of Arcane, the goddess of magic and knowledge, created from her infinite intellect as she worked to perfect her understanding of machines. As such, Dwes is a perfect construct, designed after the organic while being perfectly inorganic. Such a creation, even still, could only do so much as a simple husk, a shell. To solve this, Arcane beckoned Rom to aid her in her discoveries, asking him to bestow life onto her creation. Although at first hesitant, Rom came to agree, curious as to the extent of his sister's findings. Rom granted Dwes life, as well as his title of the Glass Emissary. Although Dwes was born a naive being, its intellect was unmatched, a mirror of its ever-intelligent creator, but one who lacked a deeper understanding of its own intellect. Arcane wished for this, too, to change, seeking out her sister, Shea, to bestow a personal will into Dwes. However, before able to beckon her sister, Father discovered Arcane's creation. Still grieved over the banishment of his youngest son, as well as those of the angels, Father saw this creation as an abomination, devoid of his light and divinity. He feared its unholy origins, citing it as a plague akin to the fell dictates. As such, he ordered Dwes's banishment, dooming it to roam the Underyng until the end of time, to serve as nothing more than its protector and warden. Although many of the gods would take great offense to such an act of banishment, harboring it with hate and a lust for revenge, Dwes, in his mechanical naivety, took no ill will towards his banishment, rather seeing it as an opportunity. Unfeeling toward all, but aware of his perfect design, Dwes now roams the Underyng, spreading his influence and knowledge of the mechanical to impressionable minds through dreams and visions. He appears in many stories, performing miracles of healing to those he meets face to face, converting his followers into perfect constructs such as himself. Over centuries of stories and folklore, these constructs have since come to be known as the Rynguard. The Rynguard, constructs of glass and metal, are what have come to be classified as thinking machines, constructs able to act with what appears to be their own accord and judgment. This designation sets them apart from humanity's automatons, which can only function with outside instruction, devoid of any ability to truly act for themselves. This hasn't stopped scholars and artificers from attempting to replicate the Rynguard's minds within their own constructs, an endeavor which, up until now, has been unfruitful. The inability to replicate the Rynguard mind, in truth, comes from humanity's misunderstanding of its function, believing that the Rynguard act completely of their own accord. This, however, is not true. Although it may appear as such to a common onlooker, The reality is that the Rynguard only operate under Dwess's direct command, akin to a network of fungus, each responding to one another under Dwess's complete control. Under their divine master, the Rynguard seek to safeguard the Underyng, acting almost as an immune system for the cosmic structure, eliminating and expelling any foreign body that dares enter their sacred halls. As such, the Rynguard are not only fiercely territorial, but equipped to deal with these foreign threats with clawed limbs, uncanny speed, and incredible strength. They are crafted to emulate perfection, and as such, are near perfect in the execution of their directives. For all their talk of perfection, the Rynguard do not yet bear the resemblance of their mechanical creator, the one truly perfect construct, as Dwess, even in all his knowledge, has yet to replicate his perfect form. As such, the Rynguard bear many common motifs amongst them, but are divided into separate classes, each designed to be perfect at completing a specific directive. The Rynguard all bear elements of their original organic selves, as it should not be forgotten that the Rynguard are derived from humanity, once loyal followers of the Glass Emissary, transformed and assimilated into a perfect network. Because of this, the Rynguard snarl with human-esque teeth, exposed to the open air, devoid of flesh to hide them. They are featureless, aside from their clicking jaws, their past selves wiped away in favor of complete unity. In addition to their visible traits, the Rynguard all share the powerful arcane ability to counteract magic. Likely derived from the glass they are constructed from, arcane effects hold no power within their reach, stripping humanity of its greatest tool of defense and offense alike. This arcane negation is what truly makes the Rynguard such an oppressive threat within combat, as although they have no magic to speak of, devoid of the will necessary to produce intent, the Rynguard can overpower even the strongest warriors without strain, stripping man of both arcane and physical options of defense. Without any real options, destroying a Rynguard of any classification is incredibly difficult, but even so, it is more than worth the effort, as each Rynguard holds within its heart the only means known to man to procure deep glass, their hearts powered by such a rare mineral. As such, many adventurers brave the Underyng in search of a Rynguard, hopeful in their chances to slay such a construct, as doing so all but guarantees unprecedented wealth and glory. All this, however, only speaks of the Rynguard in a general capacity, leaving much to discuss surrounding the differences in their specific classes and design. The most recognizable of their kin, Rynguard Dukes, serve as the common defender of the Underyng. Standing at a height of 8 feet tall, Dukes have long, sharp claws at the end of their finely articulated hands and arms, used as their main offensive weapon. These claws cut deep and sap mages of their arcane energies with each strike. The Duke's head is the most humanoid of all the Rynguard, echoing a vague resemblance in shape and size, although still void of the features that would make such a thing human. Furthermore, a Duke's long legs, consisting of articulated hips and a long band of curved, springy metal, grant a Duke an incredible sprint speed, akin in design and function to the blade prosthetics of reality. Stepping away from the Dukes, the Rynguard Foremen are a specialized class of Rynguard, tasked with the overseeing of Underyng repairs. They are slimmer than Dukes, sporting less physical strength, even still much more than a mortal man. Their stark difference from the Duke, however, comes in their tall, cylindrical heads, which sit upon their humanoid neck and jaws. This head is a fabricator of Rynguard Scuttlers, mechanical beetles that pour out of a foreman's mouth as they are manufactured. These beetles, with their complex mechanisms, inject unrefined glass into damaged sections of the Underyng's corridors, repairing any and all damage to these spaces, as well as other Rynguard. There are accounts, however, of these scuttlers malfunctioning, injecting organic material with the same substance, effectively coming to replicate the same procedure as glass refiners. Under these circumstances, however, a host organism doesn't ever seem to expire. Instead, continuing to live its life as normal, until the glass within it comes to expand beyond what the body can allow. At this point, clear, arcane glass explodes from the creature, bursting from its body akin to an explosion frozen in time. These glassified creatures appear to lose all bodily functions at this point, and yet they never cease to move. It's theorized that the glass within a host, injected by a scuttler, is somehow connected to the larger Rynguard consciousness, which effectively puppets the corpse as one of its own, until the host's body loses structural integrity. As such, although a Rynguard foreman's slow speed prevents them in and of themselves to be an incredible threat, the swarms of scuttlers it produces tend to be cause for concern amongst adventurers and explorers. In order to support such a fabricator on their shoulders, Rynguard foremen are much slower than dukes, having heavy, load-bearing legs and feet, designed to prevent a loss of balance within any terrain or circumstance. Even still, there is a final class of Rynguard to discuss, the Sovereigns, which are much more ornate in their construction and design. Towering over the other classes of Rynguard, standing at 10 feet in height, these constructs are ever draped in ornate robes and silks, exuding a presence of power and authority with their each and every step. Adorned in great crowns, sculpted into their heads, the Sovereigns serve as conduits of Dwess's will, being the only of the Rynguard with a direct connection with the divine machine. With this connection, the Sovereigns then relay the Emissary's will unto the Rynguard under its watch, speaking a forgotten tongue known only by the constructs, a cacophony of clicks and trills referred to as Ryng speak. In addition to their robes and crown, the Sovereigns wield great staves to command the space around them, using them as great weapons against any mortals caught within their wake. It is rumored that only a Sovereign can guide a mortal to Dwess, seen in some religious communities almost as ferrymen or prophets, being sought after by these groups in the hopes that the worthy among them may come to shed their flesh in favor of glass and metal. As such, these cults aren't very commonplace amongst Ryng, as sects that participate in such practices and rituals are usually never heard from once they make their trek into the Underyng. Whether or not these beliefs lead such cults to what they're looking for is as of yet unknown. But regardless, it remains true that practices such as these crop up in various communities every few years, regardless of geographical or cultural distinctions. An interesting, if not somewhat worrying phenomenon researched by Ryng's religious scholars. With all that, though, I do believe we have reached the end of today's discussion. As always, thank you all for sticking around to the end of the video to support me and my work. If you enjoyed this discussion, feel free to leave a like on the video, and subscribe for weekly dives into Ryng's world and lore as it continues to progress and develop. Additionally, feel free to leave any suggestions for future topics we should discuss in the comments down below. And if you'd like to go a step further in your support of me and Ryng's development, consider becoming a Patreon member, to not only support me, but gain access to additional benefits. On Patreon, you can gain access to my videos early and ad-free. You can engage with me in an exclusive supporter chat within our Discord, as well as gain access to Q&As with yours truly. All this alongside a slew of other additional perks. The link to my Patreon, as well as our Discord server, will be in the description. Until next time, this has been Trackpad Artist. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you again soon for our next discussion.